Everybody, I'm so excited today. This is episode 5 of Mantegrity. And I did have a tagline here, and I had it in my last episode. I don't have it anymore. But I am very excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Robert John Zager. He's a licensed clinical psychologist. He's a data wizard, and he works with local government to prevent youth violence. And he has a plethora of knowledge on how we, as men, from the beginning of our youth and teen and childhood, how we can prevent these types of occurrences like suicide, homicide, um, you know, sexual um, sexual occurrences. And we've been talking a lot before the podcast, and I would love to just open it up to Dr. Zager and have him introduce himself. And let's just open it up, Dr. Zager.
Um, my name is Robert John Zagar. I was born in the Naval Hospital. My father was a Special Forces in Navy, and then later a Marine in China behind enemy lines for 3 years. My mother was a Navy aircraft mechanic who then migrated to nursing school and delivered babies in World War II. And I was raised on the south side of Chicago, and our next door neighbor became an archbishop who helped John Paul II make a church in Krakow, in a communist town without a church. And I was dragged to church every morning for the 6 o'clock mass and worked very hard at the elementary school. That was a Polish American neighborhood. Now it's Hispanic American. And then I went to high school in Milwaukee. My parents moved up to Wisconsin, and I've had a very blessed life. I have 4 degrees, a bachelor's, a master's, and then finally a doctorate in research design and statistics from the best program globally at Northwestern University. My doctoral chairman was a Methodist deacon. He was a Navy officer. When he found out that my family was all Navy, he didn't even look at my transcripts or my GREs that I worked so hard and said, "I know what you went through." And it was the strictest kind of environment that you could have. And I'm very blessed to have that. And then I worked on an employee scholarship today that the tuition at Northwestern is $86,000 a year. So figure that out. My doctorate there is probably worth at least $500,000 in today's dollars. But then I wouldn't stop going to school. I studied for a year in a sleep lab, and I studied a year at the University of Illinois Chicago in public health, and did 2 years of pre-med simultaneously at DePaul, and then did 2 years of medical school at DePaul, and I rather at Barry, and then University of Miami. And I hit a wall. I said, I have enough school. I'm 35 years old. This is enough. And I went over to Kellogg Graduate School of Management, and on the board they said, there's this job crunching numbers. And I said, I think I could crunch some numbers. I've been doing it for the last 5 years. I already had a dozen publications. And so I went and interviewed and started working in the Department of Labor in the unemployment compensation actuarial services, and did that for a year. At night, helped the American Board of Medical Specialties show that we need to improve the way we do physical exams because they're not very accurate. Use laboratory tests. And then I got this magical job at the first juvenile court in the world here in Cook County, founded in 1899 to help the abused and the neglected and the delinquent youth of the county. I took an oath to protect those who can't protect themselves, who do not have the mental or physical capacity. And so I'm held at a higher standard than the average clinical or school psychologist or statistician and researchers because I take oaths very seriously, just like my parents who were very serious with me. And I was lucky. The presiding judge liked me. He gave me an order. I collected the largest data set on violence. Northwestern helped me put it into the computer. I bribed my friends with money to help me put the numbers in, and we started to look at the math. And after spending thousands of hours, the editor of a journal said, there's this guy in Minnesota that can do the job better than you. And I already knew about the University of Minnesota because my doctoral chairman went there, and I learned about the University of Minnesota press multiphasic personality inventory, the best psychological test on the planet, with 19,000 empirical studies and 250 federal and state appellate court cases attesting to its validity. So I then went up to Minnesota, worked with this guy, and we developed an equation, Will Grove and I, to predict violence at 91% accuracy for youth and 99% for adults, and on replication, 97%. The author of the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory then took me under wing and taught me personally how to use the computerized version, which is much more accurate. Our current ways of finding high-risk people are 39% accurate, and a computer's 97%, as I already said. So since then, I've been giving every patient I see the computerized version because there are 40,320 ways you can deceive me in a Poisson's distribution of 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2. Multiplied times 1,000 mental illnesses, that's 40,320,000 ways to deceptively present a mental illness to me. I'm not Einstein, and even Einstein couldn't memorize that many equations. So I use a computer. Why? Because I want to help people. When you go to a physician, they take a blood test, they do an x-ray, they do a CAT scan or an MRI, they do a throat swab, and you know exactly what you have. You come to a good psychologist like me, I'm in the top 5 percentile, because when I question my peers, that's how many people raise their hands that they do a computerized algorithm. 2 out of a room of 40, that's 5%. Simple math. And I get people out of my office in 3 months. Why? My stats professor at Northwestern showed with a million numbers that 8 sessions give you 50% improvement. 26 sessions give you 25% improvement. 54 more sessions give you 87.5 or 12.5% improvement. So 88 sessions, 88% improvement rounded up. If I don't get people well in 88 sessions, I haven't done my job. And I measure them and they love it. I have bankers, I have insurance people, I have physicians, I have lawyers, nurses, every possible occupation from almost every country. I even do immigration exams. I just did one for someone in Europe, Africa, Asia. Name the country in Asia or Africa, I've probably seen that person. And so I'm blessed because I had good parents and I had a really good school. And as my friend with 5 doctorates, 2 from Oxford, 2 from Harvard and Northwestern, and an honorary doctorate from Exeter College, said, the child treats the world the way the world treats the child. So I know that from another lawyer at the law school who became dean of the George Mason Law School, a boy or girl with a good home, a good school, and the expectation of a good job or a good job does not go to jail, does not land up in a mental hospital, does not land up unemployed and sick. They usually succeed, at least with about 90% accuracy, because those factors, those economic factors, make such a difference. And I think that for men growing up, the most important thing is to believe in themselves, no matter what people say to me. I remember a high school teacher saying, "You'll never graduate from college." Four degrees later and 15 years of college, I didn't listen to him. He said, "You have an IQ in the high average. It's at the genius level now because I studied so hard." I had relatives who said, "Oh, you need to work in a factory." I don't work in a factory. That was from their perspective. People will give you their perspective, but you have to trust your mind, your heart, your vision, and find mentors along the way. Mentors who are like your father, like your uncles. I was very, very lucky. I had a father who was in special forces behind enemy lines. Today, that would be the equivalent of SEAL Team 6. And in the history of the SEALs, his group is in the first 15 or 20 pages. I had really good mentors in high school who taught me, and classmates went on to run the Vatican. A classmate the year behind me was the prefect of the papal household. He would introduce the Pope to kings and queens and princes and princesses and presidents and prime ministers and governors. I had high school and college professors that I bonded with and learned to do. I became a travel agent for a couple of weeks, so our high school senior class could go to New York and Washington, and we could learn about the business capital of the world, New York, and the power control center of the world, Washington, D.C. And then I went to undergrad and worked in physiology labs, working with cats and rats and monkeys, and then moved on to learn psychological testing at the Illinois Institute of Technology and Engineering School, and then went on to Northwestern and worked in the medical center with neurology, psychiatry, obstetrics, gynecology, and alcoholism addiction patients at both Loyola and Northwestern medical centers and other hospitals throughout the city. And then I was fortunate to work at Evanston Hospital, and then did postdocs at Rush Press St. Luke's and U of I School of Public Health. And everywhere there was another mentor, another person I could learn precious little nuggets of how to be a man, how to be successful, and how to know from your heart what is important to do. And then I was lucky to meet a mate, and a mate who believed in me and I believed in her, and we took our vows at a small Methodist church. We had our civil wedding in this little chapel with the windows from Canterbury Cathedral, 500 years old. They sent them to Northwestern during World War II, and the campus never gave them back. And then we married a year later in our religious ceremony, and in a country where one of the greatest men in the 20th century lived, John Paul II. And I had a connection with him because my next door neighbor bought him $100,000 to build a church in a communist town. There's no such thing as no religion in a town. It's necessary. It teaches you gives you a moral compass, and gives you the way to meditate and pray to make your frontal lobes light up so that you don't have anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress. And um, and we were fortunate to actually see John Paul II at a stone's throw distance when he came the last time to Poland. And watch this plane go back to Rome, and everybody knew it was a goodbye. And I think the most important thing is to remember to believe in yourself and not to listen to other people. I've had tragedies. I've had family members who have been abused, who have been terrorized. And I did what I could to protect them as much as I could. And then I informed others who were doing these things that there were solutions, namely the American Special Forces, not the police. And they backed off because when we explained to the authorities what the situation was. So when you're in a bad situation, keep your wits about you, explain, talk, communicate. The two major predictors of violence are poor decision making, which is the frontal lobe executive function or dysfunction, and prior arrests. But you can reverse that. I work with the Allstate CEO and the insurance executives of Chicago. We gave mentoring jobs and anger management to 283,000 kids, preventing 1,100 murders. That's $5.5 billion saved by the insurance companies in disability, health, personal injury, and workers' comp payouts. There's always an economic answer, and I would highly recommend to those of you who could do fifth grade math, go get a degree in accounting or finance. The average salary is 75 to 150,000 for 5 years of school. Go and work for the government. If you work for the government, you have a pension after 25 years equal to your salary. And so think about those kind of options. The last pensions around in America are the US government, usajobs.gov. But please believe in yourself, stay close to your family, believe in your religion, and get as much education as you need, and then go out and work. And the more experience you have in the more sectors of society that you work in, you understand the whole view of things. I worked as a mail carrier. I worked in a factory. I worked delivering mail. I worked delivering in the post office, delivering mail and sorting mail. I made sausages. I did so many crazy things. I worked the night shift making styrofoam coolers. I made sailboats, one of my passions. And by working in simple jobs, I began to see that I could relate to the average person and speak in their language. The brightest man I know with the 5 doctorates said, Robert, simplify it and less is more. I've already talked too much. I wish every person who watches this the best of success, happiness, and health. Thank you. Do you like it?
Yeah, it was great. I would love to set up another session so that I can delve into some of these things like religion, family education.
Can we
You
do
said
it?
like
Can we do it in a month or so, maybe?
absolutely, yeah, yeah, for sure.
Let's do it in a month or so. Because I have a lot of deadlines right now that I've got to meet. Okay. I
Okay, sounds good.
appreciate this opportunity, and I think this will help a lot of men. And
Yeah,
keep doing
definitely.
what you're doing. Go work for the VA. I'm serious.
Okay.
I had a
Yeah.
banker come to me who HSBC closed their bank, and he's now 7 years into the Fed, and he's 55. Please do it. You have no choice.
Okay.
You'll
As
get,
a
if you amortize it, you'll get a pension equal to your salary after 25 years. You're still young enough to do it.
okay. As
All
a
right, take
pharmacist,
care.
are you talking about?
Pardon me?
As a pharmacist or as a
Yes. At there's a West Side VA, there's the
Yeah,
one on the out by Loyola University and in Maywood, and there's one at North Chicago. That's
yeah,
where I was born at Great Lakes Naval Hospital. There's a vet hospital right next door.
yeah,
Go pick one of those three